Welcome to the 25th chapter, the book of Leviticus, a Sabbath rest for the land. The word Sabbath, it is only associated with the Jews. There's a seventh-day rest that God did on the seventh day of creation, and it mentions the seventh day, but the word Sabbath is associated with Israel and the Jews. It doesn't appear in the Bible until Exodus 16:23, not at all in the book of Genesis. And it first appears, it says, "This is the word which the Lord spoke. A Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord, is tomorrow." And that was concerning picking up the manna that was in the wilderness. And then we come to these other Sabbath laws, the Sabbath as far as not working for people, and now we get a Sabbath rest for the land. It begins, "And the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai," and they're still there on Sinai, coming out of Egypt for a couple of years, and that's about it. "Speak to the sons of Israel. And you shall say to them, whenever you should enter into the land which I give to you," that is the land of Canaan, "then the land shall rest a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 7 years you shall trim your grapevine, and you shall bring together its fruit." The 7 years here, there's 7 days of a Sabbath between, in what they call weeks, but it's a Sabbath, 7 days, and then there is the Sabbath year of 7 years, and here is 6 days you shall sow and tend to your grapevine and so forth, but the 7th year will be a Sabbath rest in the land, a Sabbata to the Lord, same as the 7th day. "You shall not sow your field, and you shall not trim your grapevine, and the produce ascending by itself in your field you shall not reap up, and the grape of your sanctification you shall not gather in the vintage. A year's rest will be for the land." So 6 years they plant and eat the things, but the 7th they don't. And the Sabbaths, that should be an S after that because that's plural. The Sabbaths will be the Sabbaths of the land will be foods to you, and to your children, and to your maidservant, and to your hireling, and to the sojourner lying near to you, and to your cattle, and to the beasts in your land. All of its produce shall be for food. So 6 years, 7 years, of course, they eat, but they eat the food from the 6. "And you shall count out to yourself 7 rests of years, 7 years 7 times, and they will be to you 7 periods of 7 of years, 9 and 40. So basically, the 5th year release should start up right up here. Let me put a note in there so I'll remember to move it, and we'll give it an arrow, and we'll move it from there up to here. Pretty neat program. So what he's saying here now, you count out 7 years. Before it was the 7 days, and now the 7 years of 7 times. So then the 7th year was a rest, but now the 7 times, they will be to you periods of 7 of years, 9 and 40 years. So 7 times 7 is 49. "And you shall declare by trumpet sound in all your land in the 7th month, the 10th of the month, in the day of making an atonement, you shall declare by trumpet in all your land. And you shall sanctify the year, the 50th year, Pentecoston. That's the Pentecost comes from that. That would be the 50th days after the feast. And you shall proclaim forth a release upon the land to all the ones dwelling it. So now that means a freedom of people. Their way of economy was built around the sevens, and a release of the land. You didn't work the land, and you released the people that were in bondage, supposedly. But we'll see what happens here. A year of release will be its indication to you, and you shall go forth each to his possession. So wherever you were bound to, you'll be freed, and you could go back, supposedly. And you shall go forth each to his family. This indication year of release, the 50th year, it will be to you. You shall not sow, nor in any way shall you reap the produce ascending of itself, and you shall not gather the vintage, the things having been sanctified of it. For it is an indication of release. They call it Jubilee. I don't know where they come up with Jubilee in the King James, but it's an indication, simasia, a sign of a release. It shall be holy to you. From the fields you shall eat its produce, and in the year of the release, the indication of it, each shall return back unto his possession. So the 50th year, you don't plant, work it, and the people go back are freed. And if you should render a sale property to your neighbor, or if you should acquire by your neighbor, let not a man afflict his neighbor. According to the number of years after the indication shall you acquire land from your neighbor, and according to the number of years left of the produce shall he sell to you. So if it was only 1 year left, it wouldn't cost you much. If it was 48 years, it would cost you a lot for that land, because that's how long you could have it. And insofar as there might be many of the years, he shall multiply the value of his possession, and insofar as there might be less of the years, he shall lessen the value of his possession. For by number of the produce years left shall he sell to you. So there it is. The value of the land depends on the seventh. Now, I don't know if Israel still follows this at all. It became a country in 1948, so 50 years, 48, 58, 68, 78, 98, would have been the 50th year. And that means they wouldn't have done certain things. You can go back and look and find out. I didn't, but I don't know if they follow this at all anymore. Let not a man afflict his neighbor. And you shall fear the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God. So you're not to mistreat these people that if they are under your protection. Now, the servitude of these people, we'll get into it, and we'll see what in here. They're to let the people go, and after a certain period of time. But when the Jews came back after the 70 years in Babylon, it says, and the cry of the people and their wives was great against their brothers of the Jews. And there were some saying, with our sons and with our daughters we are many, and we shall take grain and shall eat and shall live. And there are some saying, our fields and our vineyards and our houses we mortgaged, and we shall take grain and we shall eat. And there are some saying, we borrowed money for tribute of the king of our fields and our vineyards and our houses. And now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers, as the sons of our sons. And so they were complaining when they came back. And behold, we are tyrannizing over our sons and our daughters, selling them for bondmen, and there are some of our daughters being tyrannized already, and there is not power to redeem them by our hands, for our fields and our vineyards belong to the important ones. And I fretted very much as I heard their cry and these words. And my heart took counsel with me, and I did combat against the important ones and the rulers. And I said to them, well, shall a man exact from his brother what you do? And I put upon them a great assembly, and I said to them, We have acquired our brothers of the Jews, having been sold to the nations by our voluntary offerings. And do you sell your brothers? So they were buying back the Jews that were sold to the nations, but yet the slavery was still going on within Israel. Or shall they be sold to us? And they were quiet, the important ones. They did not find a word. And I said, the matter is not good which you do. Should you not go forth thus in the fear of our God because of the scorn of the nations of our enemies? And also I and my brothers and my acquaintances put up for them money and grain. We abandoned indeed this exaction. So this is all goes on how they misused this whole thing. We're in now in Leviticus, and you shall observe all my commandments and all my judgments, and you shall keep and shall observe them, and shall dwell upon the land complying. And the land shall give its resources, and you shall eat in fullness, and you shall dwell complying upon it. And if you should say, well, what shall we eat in this 7th year if we do not sow and we do not gather in our produce? Then I will send my blessing to you in the 6th year, and the land shall produce its produce for 3 years. So because that'll be for that 6th year, and the land that they didn't grow, so they didn't grow anything, they didn't have the year afterwards either. And you shall sow the 8th year, and you shall eat from the old produce until the 9th year, until whenever its produce should come. You shall eat old produce of the old. So that's how they're to make it through the 7th year, by eating the 6th year, to be lasting for 3 years. And God says he will give them more for that period of time. I don't know if they've tried that and see if it works with today or not. And the land shall not be sold for security. For the land is mine, for you are foreigners and sojourners before me. And according to all the land of your possession, you shall give ransoms for the land. And that's what it was talking about with Nehemiah. But if your brother with you should be in need, and you should have sold from his possession, and the one acting as next of kin, being near to him, should come, then he shall ransom the sale property of his brother. So if I had a brother and he had to sell because he didn't have money, well, then I come and pay the difference so he can get his land back. But if there might not be any acting as next of kin, and later he should be well provided in the hand, made a lot of money somehow during that period of time, and should find himself fit for his ransoms, then he shall reckon the years of his sale property, and shall give back the superior amount to the man to whom he sold it. And the man shall return back to his possession, the one that's owned it originally. But if his hand should not be well provided with the thing fit so as to repay him, then his sale property will be to the one acquiring it until the year of the release. So you sell the property, and for 50 years, you don't have it. The other person uses it, but at 50 years, you get it back. And it shall go forth in the release. Then he shall go return to his possession. But if any should sell a house inhabited in a city being walled, that's different now, that before was out in the country and land, then there shall be a ransoming of it until the time should be fulfilled. A year of days will be the time of ransoming it. But if he should not be ransomed until the entire year should be fulfilled, the house, being in the city having a wall, shall be validated firmly to the one acquiring it. Unto his generations it will be sold to him, and it shall not go forth in the release. So it's like you have you go to a pawn shop, take a wristwatch, and you get in there, and it gives you so much money. You have a certain period of time to come in there and get it back by paying the pawn fee, and if not, the pawnbroker keeps it and then can sell it for whatever he wants. But the houses and properties in which there is not among them a wall round about, out in the fields, they shall be considered belonging to the field of the land. It's ransomable. Always they shall be. And in the release they shall go forth. And the cities of the Levites, the houses of the cities of their possession, shall shall be always ransomable to the Levites. So if it was in a city there of a Levite, then he could always ransom it back, buy it back. And whatever should be ransomed by the Levites, then the sale of the houses of the city of their possession shall go forth unto the release. For the houses of the cities of the Levites, this is their possession in the midst of the sons of Israel. That's all they have. They don't work, and the fields being separated in their cities shall not be sold, for this is their eternal possession. So it's handed down generation to generation, the Levitical property. And if your brother who is with you should be in need, and you shall be powerless in the hands with you, then you shall take hold of him, and he shall live with you as a foreigner and a sojourner, like a bondman, and you shall not take interest from him. So he couldn't take interest, though, nor for an amount, but he was to work for him. And you shall fear your God, and your brother shall live with you. You shall not give your money to him with interest due, and with usury you shall not give to him of your foods. Don't charge him interest like a pawnbroker would. I am the Lord your God, Ego Kyrios o Theosimon, the one leading you from out of the land of Egypt, to give to you the land of Canaan, so as to be your God. So this land here, and it continues now with the servants. And if your brother should be humbled by you and should be sold to you, he shall not serve to you in the slavery of a servant. He shall be as a hireling or a sojourner to you unto the year of release, the 50th year. Thus he shall work for you. And then he shall go forth in the release from you, himself and his children with him. And he shall go into his family. So there's no slavery within the Jews. And he shall go forth unto his family, unto the possession of his father he shall run. For these are my servants whom I led from out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold in a sale of a domestic servant. You shall not violently strain him in his trouble, and you shall fear your God. And the Jews today take care of each other very well and look out for each other. And a boy and a girl, as many as should be to you from the nations, slaves, as many as there are round about you, from them you shall acquire a bondman and a bondwoman. And from the sons of the sojourners being among you, from these you shall acquire, and from their relatives with you, as many as happen to be in your land, let them be to you for a possession. So they're different if you are a sojourner, or you can be sold, bought and sold. Doesn't mean you were, but you could be if you allow yourself to become that. And you shall divide them to your children after you, that property of the slaves, bondmen, bondwomen, and they shall be to you possessions unto the aeon. But the ones of your brothers and of the sons of Israel, each concerning his brother, shall not violently strain him in his trouble. So I guess you could if it was a bondman. And if wealth should find the hand of the foreigner or the sojourner of the one living by you, say you found a bunch of gold somewhere, and your brother being in distress should be sold to the foreigner or to the sojourner living by you, so a Jew that was sold to this rich non-Jew, or from out of a foreigner by birth, after the Jew being sold, there shall be a ransoming to him. One of his brothers shall ransom him, so a brother could buy him from a foreigner. A brother of his father or a son of his father's brother, a cousin, shall ransom him, or one of the members of the family of his flesh from out of his tribe shall ransom him. And this is what they're supposed to do, to buy these back from the non-believers. Well, they did this recently when they a lot of Jews came into the Palestine, started buying up a lot of the land from the Palestinians. And if being well provided in his hands, then he shall ransom himself. Now, if that person was a Jew, was under bondage and he found the money somehow, then he could ransom himself by giving the money to the owner who he owes work to. And he shall reckon together with the one acquiring him from the year of which he sold himself to him until the year of release. So it depends on how much he would owe by how many years he worked of the 50 years. And the money of his sale will be as the day of a hireling. Year to year he will be with him. And if to any there might be many surplus years, for these he shall render his ransom from the money of his sale. And if few should be left behind of the years to the year of the release, then he shall reckon to him according to his years, and shall render his ransom. As a hireling year to year he shall be with him. You shall not violently strain him in his trouble before you. And if he should not pay ransom according to these things, then he shall go forth in the year of the release, he and his children with him, and that is the Jew. For to me the sons of Israel are servants. These are of my children whom I led from out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Now these 70 years and all the 70 things they didn't follow, and we find out in Jeremiah, with Jeremiah, when the Jews are taken to Babylon, it's for 70 years. And here it says, and he, the king, Nebuchadnezzar, resettled the remaining ones in Babylon. And they were to him and his sons for bondmen until the kingdom of the Medes, of Cyrus. So they were bondmen, slaves in Babylon, to fulfill the word of the Lord through the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land favorably receives its Sabbaths. So they weren't doing it, so the 70 years is going to make up for those 70 years that they didn't do what they were supposed to do by observing the Sabbath all the days of its desolation, to observe the Sabbath in the fulfillment of 70 years. So we go back into Daniel and the 70 years and so forth. It talks about, but the 70 years in Daniel is another 70 years, sort of related to this, but go into Daniel, find out what that's all about. I think it's chapter 13. And so, chapter 26, our next video seminar, the results of keeping God's orders, which we should be doing, and we'll find out why we should and what happens if we do. Hope you'll join us, chapter 26. Until then, God bless.